I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Brawley.
Here.
Trustee Keck.
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir.
Yay.
Okay, and we're all here. Under public participation this evening, the first item is public comments. And this is a 2-minute opportunity. I'd like to ask the guests to, each speaker should state their name and address and sign in, and then you have 2 minutes to speak. Keep your remarks short and to the point. This is not a debate session, so is there anybody that would like to address the board at this time? Yes. Would you wait? Yeah, you'll be number 2, okay? Okay.
Greg Nelson, connecting Jefferson.
And I guess we need to have that on. There we go. Did you get that okay? Okay. The couple things that this evening. I still have an issue with the way that the budget wasn't online, and if we're going to be using that as a tool and using it to push more people in that direction, it should have been out there. And having it in one place, maybe, in fact, that day I called and it wasn't available at the front counter, just so you know. There wasn't a copy there. So I have a problem right now. I don't have a problem with the budget, per se. I have a problem with us following through. Poor job. The other thing is, I've been working with Patty Purnell and a few other people on some documents that we're seeing alterations that have not come before the board. And when people come in for licensing and things, the documents have been amended, and I don't think they can be amended without the board's approval. And I'm disappointed in that as well. And we have documentation that shows clearly it wasn't on one document, and all of a sudden now it is. That's a no-no. So I have a problem with that. The other thing is, on the budget tonight, you're going to be talking about wages. I'd like you to amend the wages to state in the beginning starting wage to minimum wage, not a dollar amount. And the reason why is if we get in a bind and we can't manage that starting dollar amount, we're bound at that dollar amount. We need to lower it, just in case, okay? We can't continue to move that up the ladder. Let's start at the bottom, just write minimum wage, and then the top is fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you're number 2.
Herschel Luckenbill, 1603 Timberlane Drive, Montgomery. I'm speaking tonight on Save the Cannon. We're doing great. We've got the cannon at the sandblaster. It has been sandblasted. It came out real beautiful. It's in the welding shop now, putting on a new powder box and putting on the parts that had rusted out. And if you'll go on Facebook to Save the Cannon, Montgomery, Illinois, see all the beautiful pictures that we're putting on there on the building, how we're building the spokes, the new spokes out in Colorado. And the 2 dates that I'd like for you to put on your calendar tonight is Saturday, May 4th at 2 p.m. We're going to have a public demonstration on putting the spokes and the wheels together. That's where we heat the rims up to 850 degrees, get them hot enough where that they won't burn the wood, but yet they'll expand. And we drop the rim down over the spokes when they're in their assembly, and then we cool them off rapidly, and it just draws the wheels together. So that's going to be a beautiful display. It'll be at Lyons Farm at 2 o'clock on the 4th of May. The cannon will be ready on the 26th. We will have a dedication with Joe Wieglin, the Teddy Roosevelt impersonator, and that'll be from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the Riverside Cemetery. and we will have the cannon draped with a 45-star flag. Thank you very much. Everything is positive. Everything's going well. We are still short about $1,000 in that range, but I want to thank everybody that's contributed so far, and the information's on the Facebook where to send money if you want to donate. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else that would like to address the board? I think that's the problem. Okay, the next item is a proclamation designating April 2013 as National Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Month. And at this time, before I read the proclamation, I just want to tell you that in January 2013, Governor Quinn signed a proclamation for April 2013 as National Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Month in the state of Illinois. And this marks the first time in over 20 years that code enforcement officers and professionals in the state of Illinois are being recognized on a state level. Our own code enforcement officer, Laura Rausch DeVore, made this possible as part of her role as first vice president in the Illinois Association. So I really give Laura a lot of credit. This is wonderful. In recent years, code enforcement officers across the state have seen significant expansion in their roles due to the recent housing and financial crisis. Code enforcement can be a very demanding role and one that tangibly benefits communities and enhances the quality of life, health, and safety of community residents. So again, I want to thank Laura for her input on this. And so I'll go ahead and read the resolution, proclamation, and then entertain a motion for approval. Whereas code enforcement officers ensure the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens and communities throughout the state of Illinois by enforcing local codes or ordinances dealing with various issues including building, zoning, housing, animal control, environmental, health, and life safety. And whereas code enforcement officers have a challenging job and are often underappreciated for the critical role that they have in improving living and working conditions for residents and businesses of local communities. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing and ensuring safety, and preserving property values through knowledge and application of housing, zoning, and nuisance codes and ordinances. And whereas code enforcement officers have a highly visible role in the communities they served, and they're called upon to provide quality customer service and excellence to the residents and businesses of these communities. And whereas the Illinois Association of Code Enforcement wants to recognize and honor code enforcement officers and professionals all across the state of Illinois and increase awareness of the importance of code enforcement within the communities of Illinois. And whereas the Illinois Association of Code Enforcement is celebrating its 20th anniversary and 20 years of success, safety, and service in the state of Illinois through 2013. And Pat Quinn, Governor of the state of Illinois, signed a proclamation recognizing April 2013 as Code Enforcement Officer Month in the state of Illinois. Now therefore, I, Marilyn Michelini, as President of the Village of Montgomery, on behalf of its citizens and village officials, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2013 to be National Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Month in all of Montgomery, Illinois. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Brawley.
Yes.
Trustee Keck.
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir.
Yay.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Under Board, Commission, and Committee reports, Beautification Committee, Trustee Bond.
Beautification will be meeting April 17th at 6 o'clock in the community room.
Thank you. Historic Preservation Commission will meet Monday, April 15th at 6:30 PM in the community room. Intergovernmental Committee, Trustee Lee.
Meet Monday, April 22nd at 6 o'clock in the community room.
Thank you. We'll go ahead with the consent agenda. Minutes of the special village board meeting on March 5th, 2013. Minutes of the village board meeting on March 11th, 2013. Minutes of the committee of the whole meeting on March 13th, 2013. Accounts payable through March 19th, 2013, in the amount of $365,846.95. Accounts receivable report for February 2013. Cancellation of the April 8th, 2013 village board meeting. And cancellation of the April 10th committee of the whole meeting. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
Yay.
Okay, take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And the motion passes. Okay, the next item for separate action, item A is ordinance 1559, approving the FY14 annual operating budget and capital improvements program. This is a second reading, and I will defer to Administrator Jesselfeld.
Thank you, President Michelini. This brings us to the end of a process that began back in November when the department heads started preparing their budgets. Since what you saw last week, I have made the changes we discussed. Now in the police department, we have the lease of 6 police vehicles being shown in there, and the bucket truck has been added in. The one other change I made is Mike had requested an extra $4,000 for renting the bucket truck if we didn't buy one, and so I backed that out since I put the bucket truck in. So that was a subtraction. Overall, the general fund now shows revenue of about $9.43 million and expenses of about $9.3 for net income of $127,000. And the total budget shows revenue of $24.35 million and expenses of $23.95 million. So I would like to thank the department heads and staff for all their hard work on preparing it, and I'd like to thank all of you for the time and effort you've spent going through it and for the comments you've made for it. So with that, I would answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions of Administrator Zoffel? Any questions? Questions? If I don't hear any questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
No.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
And the motion carries. Moving on, ordinance 1560, approving the FY14 salary schedule. This is also a second reading. Here again, I'll defer to Acting Administrator Zoffel.
There have been no changes to this since the last meeting, so I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions?
Just one, could we change it to just say minimum wage for minimum? Or
I believe the board could do that.
is that something?
I think the
Go ahead.
complication with that would be if we were to list one of these jobs as available, the listing would be kind of goofy. It would be like from minimum wage to 50,000.
Yes.
So logically, it wouldn't track for people, I don't think.
I don't think it would either. I would agree with you, Trustee Bond. So,
Okay, just checking.
okay. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
No.
And the motion carries. Moving on to the next item, ordinance 1561, authorizing the issuance of $8,500,000 waterworks system revenue bonds. This is a waiver of first and passage on second reading. I will defer this to Acting Administrator Jeff Stoffel.
Thank you, President Michelini. And items C and D tie together. Although it may look like we're not looking to issue $17 million in bonds. Because these are water system bonds, this is the path we have to follow. As a water system, you can issue revenue bonds. What we're looking to issue is alternate revenue bonds. Because of that, we actually have to authorize the revenue bonds first, and then the second ordinance will say, instead of those revenue bonds you just authorized, we're authorizing the alternate revenue bonds. It's been a while since we've issued water bonds. They've either been strict general alternate revenue or they've been refunding bonds. So this is the first time this has come up, and I couldn't even tell you when, but that's why both are on here. It's just a legal requirement from our bond council. What we're actually going to be issuing is the alternate bonds, which are item D. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Is that clear to everybody about the revenue bonds versus the alternate? Okay. Do you have any other questions?
I got two.
Okay.
One is might be just a legal thing, but for publication, we just have the Beacon News in there. Should we have the Ledger Sentinel too, or
We're just required to publish it in at least one
Oh,
that
okay,
has
so just
circulation, so we try and save the cost rather than publish it in multiple,
Okay.
multiple publication, multiple papers.
And the other
You had
question,
another one. Okay.
yeah, in the same section 5, something about a petition.
Yes, do you
Go
want to
ahead.
cover?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. If enough people petition, they can have it put on the referendum. So there's a 30-day waiting period, which is why we have the authorization to issue, but then we have a waiting period while we wait to see if enough people would petition to
Okay.
have it put on a referendum.
All right.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 1561. This is item C, authorizing the issuance of the $8,500,000 waterworks system revenue bonds.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Then, going on to item D, Administrator Zolfo explained the difference here, so I will just go ahead and entertain a motion to approve item D, ordinance 1562. Do I have that motion?
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Moving on, unfortunately, our Public Works Director, Mike Kubitz, went home sick today. So I'm going to turn this next one over to Administrator Jeff Stoffel. Agreement for professional services with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for design engineering for Contract D Boulder Hill Water Main Improvements. And
Sure. As stated, this would be for the design engineering for Contract D. Pete Wallers can refresh your memory if you need on what part Contract D is. It follows the format, general way that we do all their contracts, so we'd be happy to answer any questions.
are there any questions?
So because the next one says Contract D is included in that, right?
That's for construction engineering.
Construction.
This one's for design engineering, and the next one's for construction engineering for contracts A, B, C, and D.
All right.
We'd already done the design engineering for the others. We'd already authorized that.
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve item E.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on, we have the agreement for professional services with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. for construction engineering for contracts A, B, C, and D. This is Boulder Hill Water Main Improvements. And again, I'll defer to Administrator Zolfo.
Again, as it states, this would be for the construction engineering of that project. It's per what you've seen in the budget documents that we've shown you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there
Just-
any questions?
Just one. Have we thought about going out for bid for this? Because this is like a $1.6 million contract.
Want me to address that?
Certainly.
Bidding is prohibited under Illinois law for engineering services. You only have two choices. One is go with a firm that you have an existing satisfactory relationship with, which is obviously EEI, or you have to go through the request for proposal process where we cannot bid it no matter what. You have to go through, and you have to go through a qualifications-based selection system, which is honestly quite involved. And at the end of the day, you still don't get to pick based on money. You pick based on qualifications. So that's a long answer for a quick no.
Good question.
Check.
Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, I would entertain a motion for approval for Engineering Enterprises, Inc., for the construction engineering for contracts A, B, C, and D.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Moving on, we have the 2013 proposed street maintenance program. And I believe that Engineer Wallers is going to address this.
Thank you, Village President. Before we ask for approval of the 2013 proposed street maintenance program, I wanted to quickly go through and update the board on the last few years of our street programs. As you may recall, the paving management system five-year plan started, and Jeff, if you can maybe go to the next slide, please. Started in 2010. That was the first year. And as we've progressed through, we've tried to, in each of our successive years of street maintenance, tried to make sure we addressed the streets that were identified in our 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, and 5 year plan. We're actually on the 4th year this year. But just to quickly go through, as you can see, in year 1, we completed all of the streets that were intended. And we also added some streets, and that was because of either federal funding or we had some member initiative funding that we were able to utilize. In year 2, we again completed the programs that were outlined in our study and added some additional roads, again, because of member initiative or federal funding. And Jeff, if you can continue. And in year 3, again, we completed the program that was outlined in year 3, and then we added Jackson Street because we were able to we had better bids than expected. We now get to year 4, and this is calendar year, by the way, not fiscal year. So this will be the 2013 program. We intend to do Hamlet Circle, Riverbend Drive. Jackson was completed already, and we're adding a Douglas Avenue LAFO, which is federally funded, and then a Lebanon Street because of need. And then year 5, we'll continue on with our programmed plan. And if you can go to the last slide. And just to kind of summarize it for you, then from years 1 through 4, we've scheduled or completed all of the roads that we had agreed to do in the original plan that was adopted by the village board. And we've also added a number of roadways on the right, as you can see. And again, that was because we had member initiative funding through Representative Linda Chapel-Avia, and we also were able to secure about $1 million in federal aid resurfacing funds during that period. So we're trying to stay true to the program that was outlined when we did the last study. And so tonight what we're asking for is approval of the program as outlined in the cover sheet, and which will include the items that were intended to be in the program with some additions that we have funding for, such as Lebanon and patching on Dixon Road. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is consistent with what we'd put into the budget this year.
Pete, I got one question for you. How come nothing's being done about that Seasons Ridge Boulevard? That road's gone to pieces. That thing's terrible.
Yeah. So one of the things you may recall, we go through and we rate all of our roads, and as we talked about the deterioration curve that we have, one of the things we're learning as we go through these additional resurveys of our streets is how quickly streets age and deteriorate. Well, obviously, Briarcliff, Seasons Ridge Boulevard have deteriorated quicker than I think we would have expected. We'll take another look at those. The reality is we don't have funding to do anything with them this year. What we can do is if conditions continue in year 5, we can take a look at, changing the program in year 5 and maybe addressing those streets. But I mean, right now, we just don't have the funds to address them. We recognize that they are deteriorating faster than we would like.
And that Fifth Street between Montgomery Road and Sherman, that's gone to pieces too. It's
Yeah, we are
falling
doing,
apart.
excuse me, we are going to do some patching there on that roadway, about $10,000 worth of patching, because we noticed that too. That's frankly why Lebanon is in there too, that it deteriorated rapidly and we needed to do something on it.
Because that's all
Seasons
Ridge Boulevard's all the traffic they get.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to take a serious look at maybe more of a major reconstruct on Seasons Ridge. You try to do what you can with the resources available, so it's always a give and take. And I appreciate your comment. We'll take a harder look at it, but it just speaks to the fact that we've got only so many MFT dollars, and we're trying to use them as wisely as we can. So.
Thank you.
I got a quick question. Sherman Avenue, last year we gave the contract to, I think, Liberty, if I'm not mistaken, and they patched 2 or 3 big patches,
Okay.
and they had chalk lines on 2, 3 others they didn't get to before the winter break. So is that money left over, or?
No.
I mean, the road is still in bad shape where they chalked it off, but they didn't finish it, no.
I think those patches were part of the water main break repairs, right? Not the.
I think so.
Okay. We only pay for whatever patching is done, so the village doesn't pay for anything that's not patched. If there were some that weren't done, I can look into it and report back. That's usually handled as a separate contract with Public Works. But I'll check on it.
That was off a different contract.
Yep.
Any other questions on the, yes?
Yeah, one quick one. I know some of those subdivisions out west aren't included in these, but I know we probably don't have the money for those because we're waiting for some bonds and some letters of credit from different developers. But is that something we can start looking at?
Okay, I think we need to separate our programs a little bit. Work that hasn't been completed because it's either the final lift of asphalt, I think we definitely want to separate. And I know that Attorney Anderson is working hard to either get the performance bonds perfected, like in the case of Fieldstone, where we were able to finish that final lift at no cost to the village. I think it's important we continue to pursue that first, certainly, and then if we get into a position where that's not possible, then I think we'll have to take another look at it. But I wouldn't want to use our maintenance resources to do that work when there's oftentimes a bond available for it, and, it may just take some time to get it.
I mean, can we at least look at those streets, though, to see how, for the future, because if we're gonna go and, some of them not the final surface courses on them, the subcourse, but that's failing already. So if that starts to fail, and we're not getting them funds, can we have just,
What Engineer
Yeah.
Waller said is correct.
I know, but I just wanna be able to, if they start failing, what can we do then?
Well, if they're accepted by the village, then we would need to repair them, and that would be under our, under our umbrella of general maintenance for all of our roadways. If they haven't been accepted, then I would still look to the developer to make repairs on those roads.
I guess, and just to dovetail into what Engineer Wallers is saying, is that if something becomes a safety issue, where it gets that bad, certainly I'd recommend that the village go ahead and step up and spend your own money, with the understanding you probably won't get that money back. That's just a choice that you have to make at that point. But until you get to that point, I would say what Engineer Wallers opined is absolutely correct, is don't spend your money when you've got other potential sources of revenue for it.
Which brings me to my next question. What's the status on some of those?
Working hard.
All right.
I mean, I can give you a more detailed answer if you want it, but, we are pursuing, there's really one bond claim left, and that's the Huntington Chase. And that one has been the most resistant bond company I've ever encountered. We've made some substantial progress in the court case, but the problem is it's a full-on battle at court. We've gotten favorable rulings, and I'm putting some pressure right now on them that I hope to have some movement maybe in the next 30 or 60 days. However, that's a hope. It's possible they just want to drag it out, which means appeals and years down the road. but we are doing everything within our legal power to move them as quickly as possible.
Some of those potholes are getting bigger and bigger over there. That's why.
That's why I say, if it gets to the point where you decide you want to spend money, that's your choice. And if public safety is implicated, I encourage you to do it. But until then, I mean, there's still a lot of money floating around out there. And if you choose to voluntarily undertake those tasks, the bond company doesn't have to reimburse you for it.
Okay,
Their obligation is to perform, not to pay.
okay. Thanks.
Are you all comfortable and you all understand that? Okay. If there are no more questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed street maintenance program.
So move.
Second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, H, is the resolution 2013-006 for improvement by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code for Douglas Avenue Local Agency Function Overlay Improvements. And this is also, going to ask Engineer Wallers to explain this further.
Thank you. You may recall that individually, we have brought before the board approvals for the engineering, the construction for the Douglas Ave resurfacing project. At this time, what we're asking for is a resolution that's required by IDOT to sort of serve as an umbrella for the total funding. So you'll note that the total of all the funds that the village will use in their MFT fund is $116,837. So that's the current estimate. We're not spending any more money, we're just authorizing that total expenditure, which is, Rich requires the resolution for IDOT. So that's what we're asking tonight. These items have been approved in the past. You'll note that they were budgeted, and we now estimate a little, as we get further into the project, we have better information, so we just adjusted the estimates down a little bit. So, again, what we're asking for is approval of the resolution to submit to IDOT, so it just authorizes payment.
Okay, are there any questions of Engineer Wallers? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
couldn't read it, okay. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And the motion carries. The next item is Resolution 2013-005, authorizing acceptance of Parcel 2 of Unit 1 in the Belmarais subdivision. I'm going to ask our Attorney Anderson to explain this.
Thank you. And I'd actually like to explain both item I and J at the
Okay.
same time, because they
Okay.
are.
But we'll vote separately.
You will, yes, I would ask that, but it's probably easier to explain them together. As you may recall, this is the Balmarais subdivision out west of town. Back in, I want to say, the fall, the developer then at the time, Saratoga Homes, was in, as well as a successor developer, which ultimately I think is being called Romans Development Group, to talk about two items. One was acceptance of the basin out there, and then the second item was changing the structure of their development process to remove the requirement for a letter of credit or a bond to secure the entire subdivision all at once, and change that into a lot-by-lot obligation, where as a builder comes on, they have to put in their own sidewalk, they have to put in their own street trees, but we don't make the overall development secure a large bond for things that we don't know when they're going to happen. Unfortunately, development slowed down so that you can't really say, oh, it's going to be complete in a year or 18 months. We don't know when it'll be complete. So we wanted to take some of that burden off of the developer, as long as we didn't create risk for the village. We don't believe we have by creating this agreement, which is recorded against the property, so that everyone is on notice that if they buy a lot to build on, that they have an obligation to put in their sidewalks and street trees. So I think that the risk to the village is very minimal. So that was back in the fall, we had talked about that, but the relations between the original developer and the successor developer took a little time to work out, and I think that it's completely worked out now, or I know it's completely worked out now. And so now it was appropriate to bring this back. The developer is here, Mr. Nick Bombeck. You've met him before. I don't know if you want to say anything or not. It's totally up to you. Right. I think they're just here to show their support for the process. And with that, I could take any questions, but otherwise we'd just seek your approval to, one, accept that basin, because it is done, and number two is to convert it to a lot-by-lot security agreement.
Okay, and are there any questions, first of all?
Separate discussion for the two items then?
Yes.
Okay. I have no discussion on the first item.
Okay, any discussion on the first?
Yeah, which basin is this?
This is the furthest one west. It borders, I guess, Oswego. You know, it's on our boundary, so as far west as you can go in the village. It's the one that's kind of behind an existing basin. It's the one that's more,
There's a field over there, right?
it's in the middle of the field.
And this is item I, the resolution 2013-005.
Well, we're gonna have to-
So, did you have another question?
Sorry.
I'm
So-
sorry if I interrupted you.
That's okay, sorry. So we're going to accept this, but we're going to maintain it then, correct?
Correct, that's a given.
This is the SSA fund that we're going to have to charge the residents to maintain, correct?
That you already charged the residents
Already.
to do, and that the board voted to reduce the levy at the last opportunity because the developer has taken care of quite a bit of the obligations.
Okay, is that understood?
I
Okay,
just-
I would entertain, oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
I just have one kind of obvious question. Romans Development Group is on board and agrees with all of this.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we're going to discuss that at the next, as soon as we take this vote, okay? So I would entertain a motion to approve I, the resolution 2013, with the acceptance of parcel 2 of Unit 1. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
No.
Trustee Bond?
Yes?
Okay, and the motion carries. And we'll move on to the next item, and this is the agreement with Romans Development Group regarding public sidewalk and parkway trees in the Belmarais subdivision. And I believe trustee Bond had a question on this.
Well, it's a simple one, forgive me. Since the responsibility for the sidewalk and the driveway presumably and the parkway trees, do we have sufficient standards to kind of ensure uniform quality?
We do. The subdivision control ordinance actually governs that, and EEI, I believe EEI actually does the specs for that.
The specifications are in the subdivision control ordinance, also shown on the plans that were approved. Typically, the sidewalks are inspected by the building department when the building is constructed. And then the trees, the parkway trees are done by the villages, either by the arborist or the landscape architects that the village uses.
No ash trees?
Yeah,
No ash trees?
No, right.
that's what I was
Okay.
gonna ask.
No birches either. I
No
try for
birches?
birches, but nobody lets me in.
That's
Are
it.
there any other questions on this item J?
I guess, does this affect like the style of homes? Or
No,
just,
in no way.
No.
all right,
Has nothing to do with that.
okay.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second, over here?
Me.
Denny, okay. Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Okay, and the motion carries. The next item is Resolution 2013-007, authorizing acceptance of Saratoga Springs Pond. And I'm also going to ask Attorney Anderson to discuss this.
Thank you. This is Saratoga Springs, not to be confused with Balmarais. This is formerly the inland, it's Inland Orchard Prairie North and South, but now it's called Saratoga Springs, so it's there on Orchard Road. On this one, it's a little bit of a cleanup item. This basin has been ready for acceptance for quite some time. Inland, instead of transferring it to the village like they were supposed to do, transferred it to the homeowners association. So the homeowners association was therefore maintaining it. The homeowners association didn't want that responsibility and would prefer it to be put into the SSA. And so they have taken the steps necessary to transfer that to the village, and this is your acceptance of that. So it's literally the citizens of that community asking that it be put into the village hands and that an SSA be used for it.
Is that understood? Any questions? Trustee Bradley?
Yeah, an easy question. The SSA stuff that we levied already this year would cover the maintenance costs for this season?
Yes.
Okay. You knew I was going to ask that, didn't you?
Is that, any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
Nope, sorry.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Okay, and the motion carries. The next item is the request for advance authorization to purchase police vehicles. I'm going to turn this over to Acting Administrator Jeff Zolfo.
Thank you, President Michelini. As we discussed last week, our mechanic alerted us to the fact that the cost of the Tahoes will be going up April 1st by $4,000 per vehicle. So we'd like to get permission to go ahead and get our order in now so that we can avoid that cost, which really will make up the difference in the lease versus outright purchase. So with that, I'd answer any questions.
Okay, is this is for the 6, or is this for 5, and
It's
then
for
the
the 5
pickup truck?
Tahoes, and then we have the pickup truck.
Okay.
5 Tahoes?
Yes. Last,
I thought it was 4 all total.
no, what the board agreed to last week, majority was 6 vehicles altogether, 5 Tahoes, and 1 pickup truck.
Right.
I don't go for the pickup truck.
One quick,
Okay, if you got a question?
yeah, is it okay we enter an agreement? Because somebody said that we can't enter an agreement 30 days before an election. Is that true or no?
That is not true.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Any other questions?
Nope.
If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yep.
Trustee Heinz?
No.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Keck?
Yes.
Trustee Kazmir?
No,
And the motion carries 4-2. Okay. Under items for discussion, the first item is solicitor ordinance, and I'm going to again ask our attorney Anderson to address this.
Thank you. The reason that this is on the agenda is that we had received a request a couple of weeks ago from one of the trustees, Trustee Brawley, to clarify what the rules are with regard to our solicitation ordinance so that the board and all candidates would be on the same page on that. And actually, he probably got an answer that he didn't like when I gave it to him. The reason being is that the ordinance prohibits solicitations on Sunday. If you read it, it literally does. You can't go out and you can't campaign, or at least you can't go to people's doors on Sunday. And so I looked at that, and I had actually looked at it back in December kind of quickly and gave Trustee Brawley, when he had asked that question, an off-the-cuff answer, and I said, well, that's pretty strict, but it's probably defensible from a Constitution standpoint. Said, you know, some will argue that it's too strict, but it's probably okay. But when you asked me to give you a more firm opinion and distribute it, I said, I better dig. You know, I better take a look a little bit more closely. And so I did, and this is an area where the law is constantly changing, as you would expect, because it's a constitutional issue. It's affecting not only the Village of Montgomery, but every place. And what I found was that really the case law continues to uphold the strength of the First Amendment in this area, particularly about campaigning. To give you the briefest lesson in constitutional law on this, because I like to, so you have to put up with just the briefest bit of it, is that when you talk about a constitutional right, unlike most laws that you pass, the question is, if it is a constitutional right, is the ordinance that you prepared narrowly tailored, those are magic words, narrowly tailored to achieve a compelling governmental interest? So two things, narrowly tailored and compelling government interest. So you have to articulate both of those to be able to defend that ordinance against a constitutional challenge. So you kind of take them in reverse order. What's the compelling governmental interest? Generally, when you talk about solicitors' ordinances, the interest that's being protected is the safety of your citizenry. In other words, that people are safe in their homes so that people don't come up at midnight knocking on their door, intimidating them, maybe coming in. You know, it's a public safety issue. So that's the compelling interest that has generally been articulated. And the courts have said, okay, that's a pretty legitimate interest, but then you have to say, is the ordinance that you're doing narrowly tailored to it? Is it the least restrictive way to achieve that governmental interest? And the answer there generally falls into the realm of, well, when is that going to happen? When is that safety issue going to happen? Most of the time, the answer is it's going to happen at night. And there have even been court cases that say that 9 o'clock is not late enough. You have to go further than that. But generally, kind of 9 o'clock at night is a pretty good cutoff. There's actually a good court case that uses the Girl Scout test. They say if the Girl Scouts cannot adequately market their product, it's not valid. You know, so as I looked at your ordinance and I looked at that Sunday absolute prohibition, my thought was, you know, this is just not going to withstand that. And I can't in good conscience give you an opinion that says that that's a valid ordinance. So my recommendation to you is, number one, that the staff not enforce the Sunday prohibition, you know, saying you can't go out and you can't knock on doors on Sundays. And second, that we amend the ordinance, you know, in the near future to remove that, or at least put the hours requirement that you have for the other days, which I think is till 9 o'clock, if I recall correctly. So that's kind of where it came from, and I wanted to explain the logic of that and see if there were any questions or any concerns about that.
Questions? Yes. Trustee Bond?
I would like to incorporate into this as well some additional thoughts about the solicitor ordinance. Could we just generally look at the whole subject matter?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can work with staff to kind of do a comprehensive review of it and see what else we can.
One of my concerns is that solicitors visibly display a solicitor's permit.
Picture.
And identify themselves with a formal permit, and maybe we want to revisit the cost of the permits or the permitting process.
I think that's a good idea. But in the meantime, we just won't enforce.
That would be my recommendation, is
Your
to not
recommendation,
enforce
and
the
so-
Sunday prohibition.
Right, and so if everybody's in favor of that, we will not enforce the Sunday prohibition on campaigning.
Up to 9 o'clock, maybe.
Up till 9
Up to
o'clock.
9 o'clock. I'm sure that by 9 o'clock, everybody's,
Be a little grumpy by then.
And just as a reminder too, more to the public than anyone else, you can also have a no solicitors sign, and if you do that, no one can approach your door. Well, they can do it, but then
Supposedly,
they'll
yeah.
violate the ordinance.
Yeah.
And that remains in full force
and
and
that's in
effect.
full force, okay.
One question, does that include these bags that we've been getting in the driveway? 'Cause I know we talked about this last
We're
year.
gonna- Oh, well, I was gonna say, I think that's gonna come up under new and
Okay.
finished if you're done, unless you, well,
I just-
that doesn't have any bearing with this.
I think that's probably merits its own conversation.
All right.
So we're just suggesting that you work on this with staff. We don't need any motion or anything.
Not right now. Thank you.
Okay. And the next, temporary construction signage. And again, I'm gonna ask Attorney Anderson we have a policy on this, or, I mean, we've got to establish apparently
Actually,
policy.
I was thinking maybe that,
Jamie, maybe, I had that down.
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
I can't read
This
my-
item is actually an outcome of our Business Boost program. As we were visiting some businesses, we learned that there was some concern about the construction projects that are going to be going on in the village with the Route 30 widening as well as the Route 30 and 31 interchange. And one of the concepts that came up is the idea of increasing visibility during the construction with potentially some additional temporary signage. Right now, our temporary sign rules permit 12 permits per year for up to 15 days. But so that would be shorter than potentially the duration of the construction, and also requires that they come in and pay for these permits multiple times. So we took a look at that and did some research and realized that it isn't a new idea, and that there are a lot of communities out there that allow temporary signage sort of special during construction for businesses. So what we're proposing to do at this point that we wanted to make you aware of is work on an administrative policy. So that would be a policy that staff looks at and reviews when a business would want this, that we would potentially bring to the Plan Commission just for some basic discussion about allowing businesses to have additional signage. So we're not asking you to do anything, but just wanted to make you aware of the concept that this would be an administrative policy. It would give more flexibility to staff to potentially permit temporary signage on a longer basis, but it would at a minimum do two things. One, be longer so that it would would go for the duration of the construction, and 2, waive fees. So those things would be sort of considered within this policy that we're still working out the details on. So I wanted to open that up if the board had any thoughts that they wanted to let us know. If they're, don't think this is a good idea, that we know, so we don't go forward with it.
Do I have somebody's thoughts from the board? Dan, did you have?
I like the idea, and it might be something we'd want to look at as an ongoing, maybe we'd call it construction temporary signage or something, but it's a nice gesture to help people get through a difficult time.
Trustee Brawley, I think you had.
Yeah, similarly, I think it's a great idea. So long as these signs would actually still be on their property and wouldn't interfere with construction, that'd be my only concern.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? Yes,
I'd say the waiving of the fees is appropriate.
And waiving of fees as well?
I'd put it in a different category, like, and at the same time, make sure when the construction's over, the signs come down, because you see a lot of state signs still up, and it's been long gone months ago, and the sign's still up. So that as long as they take it down when it's done, that's fine.
You're gonna have a lot of guys, a lot of trucks and cars cutting through Seasons Ridge too, I guarantee you that,
Because of the construction.
up to Montgomery Road.
I think that's going to be the case probably.
It sure is.
So any other comments? I mean, this is something that we'll work with staff, the staff will work on. So we don't need any action.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving ahead, we've got the political campaigning in the village buildings, and I think Attorney Anderson, I know you've worked on that.
Yes, thank you. This was a follow-up to an initiative that Trustee Bond put forward at the last meeting, I think, or perhaps 2 meetings ago, I don't recall. And actually, I would say 90% of this is Stan's work, and pretty good work. I tweaked it a bit to try to address a few things that I saw in it, but largely what you see here is a blanket prohibition on political campaigning in or on village property or at village events. The existing policy, which I also reviewed, is the policy for the multipurpose room only. This goes broader than that. The general rule is you can't do political campaigning of any type. The exceptions are where they're actually longer than the rule because of the necessity of that. And so the exceptions would be a candidates debate of the type you've had, elected or appointed officials who are meeting here using Village Hall kind of as a temporary office, but again, as long as they're not trying to use that as an excuse to campaign. 3, public comments period during board meetings. And then 4, when a specific elected or appointed official has been invited to speak on a particular topic. And then 5, participation in a public parade, because we all know public parades are where you get your politicians walking around shaking hands. So that's the concept. As I stated last time, I have no opinion about this. I've put it together at the request of Trustee Bond and Marilyn, your direction at the last meeting. That doesn't mean I endorse it, it just means that we prepared it.
So what's your feeling? Trustee Bond, I know you brought the subject up, and is this what you were looking, and I know you did the research on it, but is this what you were looking at, this type of?
Yes, I did do quite a bit of research in an effort to make sure we addressed it fairly. And I know I spoke kind of passionately about it. I'm just one of 6. But I do hope that we'll deliberate about this and arrive at something we can all agree to.
I think it's,
Anybody else have
sorry, I think it's well-written. You know, it highlights the candidate forum, highlights the events and stuff like that. It breaks it down.
Are we missing anything?
I don't think so.
Trustee Rowley, did you have a chance to look at it?
Yeah, just a few comments. I think that this is a little bit far-reaching for public property. Outside of this building, public rights-of-way, so Montgomery Fest, the park. I guess we don't own the park, but we use the park. I think that this is a political tool, and it's biased towards elected officials. Per this policy, no candidate for public office would have the right to do any of this, so only elected officials. I think we as leaders of local government need to promote open discussions from all of our residents and those that are also happen to be candidates. This policy will benefit the elected at the expense of the challengers. So I don't think we should move forward with this at this time.
Any other thoughts on this?
That makes sense, what Matt said. You got candidates, like when they run for state senate, Rick Slocum was here,
Yes.
yeah.
And you know, he was not invited, he just popped in, and it, you know, it's
Yeah.
a public
Yeah.
meeting, an open meeting, and he asked, you know, prior to the meeting if he could just say a couple words, and I didn't refuse him at that time. We actually didn't have a policy.
That is covered under exemption 3.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So, do you want to move forward with it? Do you want to have more discussion on it? This is the opportunity to discuss it.
So basically what Matt's comment is underlined in section 3, correct?
No, I don't know that I would be that narrow with his comment. I was talking about the specific example
Oh,
of
Rick Slocum?
Mr. Slocum.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm okay with, like, somebody like that coming and talking, you know, under section 3.
Because from time to time, we've had
Yeah, like Kay,
people come in, Kay has done it, and others that have been candidates have just said they want to, you know, say a few words,
Yeah.
and township folks. So, I mean, we either do or we don't. At the time I've been asked, we didn't really have a policy. So, you know, we either do or we don't, that's what it comes down to. If you want to have more discussion, this is the opportunity.
I don't think we should let them in here and have the campaign in here, though. Like we've got people up here during the meetings, I don't think that's right.
Well,
This one.
is this passing out material or just introducing themselves and say, I'm running for such and such a job?
Yeah, but not coming up here and then passing pamphlets out to everybody.
No, I don't think we've addressed, I mean, it's my opinion, we do not pass out any flyers.
But they have in the past.
I'm sure they have.
That's the absence of a policy
Well,
about it.
that's what I said. I was in a position where, you know, we'd done it before, so sure, go ahead. But if we have a policy that doesn't approve that, then, you know, it's very simple. Yes.
Could I ask our attorney to give his opinion on whether or not, if we were to enforce these types of rules, if they would hold up in court?
I think most of them would. I mean, you never know until it's tested, but, for example, the indoor ones, I think are pretty, you know, you have a pretty compelling right to kind of decide what happens inside the building. Maybe areas where it would be more subject to challenge, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking about, you know, the pond out here. What if somebody wanted to get up, like the old days, and speak his mind or her mind
Soapbox.
on their soapbox, literally about something? That would, you know, this would prohibit that if it was a political question. That's more questionable.
Yeah.
The nuance for me would be if the village has invested energy, staff time, money in drawing a crowd to an event, it's not fair to let someone hijack that for their political purposes, or nor is it fair to abuse that crowd with a non-community oriented activity. So while we couldn't really interfere with someone's right to protest, we could, I think, interfere with their hijacking of a village-promoted event to do that.
I think that's a fair statement, that when you narrow it a little bit more like that, again, kind of like I say, when you're inside the building, for example, or maybe you've got an event where it's a confined space and there's admission and control, you know, I think your compelling interest goes up in those circumstances. But again, these are policy questions
And
for
this
the
is,
board.
that's right, and we make the policy, so if this is something you want to do and you want to move forward with it, you know, we can do that. If you don't, then we drop it now.
I'd like to see us-
Who's gonna police this? I mean, like, The Easter egg yesterday or Saturday, I meant,
Everybody
is,
passing out campaign, were you out there passing?
no, I didn't pass out a thing, and none of,
Kidding you.
but some people did, and I don't see anything, I mean, we had nothing to do with that, really,
That wasn't our function, actually. That
but
was-
yet Jamie was there. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was gonna say, the community church did help a lot with it.
Right, they did, but I guess,
We
I
advertised
guess
it,
we advertised it, so it really was
we
our
put
program. but-
some of the stuff up, it was just kind of, but at the same time, I don't think it hurt anything to have somebody passing something out over there. It's not our property. I mean, who's gonna police it and say,
That's the
you can't give those cards away, you know, it just does, to me, it,
They're the police. We
and there
want our
was no,
police out there.
I was gonna say there was a, yeah.
I think Stan's mainly thing is the village hall.
I think that you're talking about in the building.
I think the Easter egg hunt is probably a stretch, and
Well,
perhaps Montgomery Fest is as well, but certainly anyone who is being disorderly or disobedient within this building, we would find ways to enforce that fairly quickly, and I think this would legitimately fall into that category. Yeah.
Well, is it fair to say, you have something drawn up? I mean, you have
You have it in front
Outline
of.
here. It's
you
in
have it
front of us.
you. Yes.
and do we need to tweak that? Is that what Matt's saying, that it's, you know,
I think I'm hearing a desire on the part of the board, but, you know, I don't want to speak for the
I
board.
hear hesitation.
To neck it down a little bit to maybe just inside this building,
Bill,
which
if-
we can adjust it
any
if that's the desire.
Yeah, a comment I would make would be to limit it to the village hall here, because that's where the discussion started to begin with. And quite frankly, I don't see the park across the street.
That's not our property.
That's kind of a stretch. And I fully agree with the village hall here, sure.
Maybe the police station as well. We occasionally have events there.
Do we have we have had any political events or anything like that at the police station?
Oh, you had candidates for village office at your coffee
Yeah.
at the police station. That would
Right.
be,
And they were passing out material. So,
perhaps we could revisit this in April. That would be my opinion, so it doesn't become a political tool in this.
so this is
In
kind of,
this election cycle?
This is a touchy time to be
Yeah.
addressing it, I guess. We may need to bring it up again in April after the election and.
What if we took kind of a consensus on it?
We could do a consensus.
Or, okay.
If you want it enforced just for this building? Is that what you're saying?
To me, this building and the police station, and I could call for a vote on it, or we could just take a
Well,
informal.
let's just take it informal.
Well, you should
at
put
this time.
Public Works on there, all of our buildings.
Then we should include Public Works as well.
And if you're gonna do the police station, what are they gonna do, campaign outside the police station? You don't want that to happen either.
Well, that could happen here, too.
Well, she's not on village property then. That's village property.
Well, again, that's where, like I said, you're kind of starting to stretch, I think, a little bit, because if you picture, you know, your patriot on a soapbox talking about why something is right or wrong, do you really want to stop people from doing that?
And you're
What-
gonna police them and go out there, run out there and say, "Get out of here?"
What if we give our comments to Attorney Anderson,
And then he could
review it, and come
review
back
it,
later,
but it is
next
our
month?
policy decision. Okay, I'll do a consensus vote. Trustee Bond?
Wait, consensus on what? Giving it to me?
Whether to move ahead.
On whether or not they want to do just the building or the property that belongs to us.
Okay, all right.
Okay? And then all he's saying is, but the staff could write it.
We'll just make our recommendations. I thought we were gonna make our recommendations to Attorney Anderson. He can put it in. Do we want the Public
Into this
Works?
form, or,
Yeah, the police station, outside the police station. Just make our recommendations to him before we,
Well, what if I get three of you saying one thing, three of you saying
That's what
a
I
different
just-
thing?
good
How do you
Sounds like we're
how do you feel about prohibiting it in public buildings?
Make it-
prohibiting
see
in
it.
public
Let's see
buildings.
how you feel about that, if
all
we
right,
could.
sounds good.
Okay, let's do a consensus on that.
I
Stan?
think we should move ahead. I think waiting till after the election is kind of disingenuous. Let's If it's something that needs to be done, let's do it.
Okay, Denny?
Yeah, if it's just the building.
But then coffees too.
Pardon?
Then the Maryland's Coffees that people have been going to for years.
That's true, too.
Then you wouldn't be allowed to go there and talk, and then there'd be the,
Well, that's right. The purpose of those is so Marilyn can talk to the residents. And I've, not once have I ever had Marilyn campaign to me or anybody else. That's the whole idea. She's never been confused about that.
No, I don't think there has been. I try to divert the,
That's correct.
if so, but anyway, let's take our consensus here. Maybe that's a starting point and we can come back to it. Denny?
That's a starting point. I'd rather, some of the wording in here is different, but that's all right.
So you're okay with moving ahead with it?
As long as it's inside here. Like I say, I don't want to see Dan fighting some guy and getting on Channel 2 in a water puddle out there. I think that'd be great.
Well, and honestly, I don't believe we could.
I don't believe we could either. I think, and there again, we put ordinances on the books and then we can't enforce them, so. But in this case, this is a policy decision by the board. But I just, yeah, I think we have to limit it to buildings. What'd you say, property? Property
I just said inside the public buildings.
inside public buildings. Okay, Pete, how do you feel?
I gave you my opinion a minute ago. If you're gonna do it on village, you can't do it on village property.
You wanna extend it to property, and we're saying.
Yeah,
in
if
the
you're gonna do
building.
that, do it to the property. It's not right either. Used to be you couldn't do nothing within 200 yards or 200 feet from a polling place.
That was on voting day, election
That's
day.
a different thing.
That's different.
And those rules do exist. It's 100 feet.
100 feet, okay.
100 feet
And those
from the-
rules still exist.
Yes. There have been many times we've called the county on that, and we've called,
But please remember, it's not the village's job to enforce that rule. It is the campaign officials'
the judges of the
election.
election.
Correct.
Okay, Matt,
no, I see it as unfair. If somebody comes in and passes out a card that says "vote for me" to somebody in the audience or outside in the hallway, then what, we're gonna have them arrested?
well, that's,
I think it's far-reaching for sure, so, no.
okay, so you know, okay, Bill,
Within the buildings.
within the buildings.
Yeah.
Andy,
It's in the building, it's fine.
within the buildings. Okay. So, that's what, 5 to 1.
5 to 1.
Okay, so we're gonna
Okay, I'll
tweak,
work on it.
will you tweak this?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not your policy, it's our policy, but you do the tweaking.
Absolutely. All I wanted was direction.
Yes, Chief, I think you need to be included in the conversation because of the enforcement.
Yeah, thank you. In case somebody reserves our room now until whenever, if it's politically related, the answer is no?
This policy doesn't exist yet.
No, but until then?
Until then, there is no policy prohibiting that, so whatever your current policy says, and if it says nothing, I think that you've got a
Okay.
pretty open public forum there.
Thank
We
you.
have to tweak this, and then when we bring it back, we'll accept it. So this will probably be, since we're canceling the
8th and the 10th.
meeting on the 8th, will probably not be until the end of the month anyway, right?
I suppose since you've canceled the next two,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you're all comfortable, that's the way we'll proceed. But until that time, we do now have a policy in effect. Okay? Okay, is there any new or unfinished business? Get your rocks out.
Well, this is before the spring dandelions even. You may remember last year about this time, I had quite a collection of, I've got even more of these, but I won't take the time to spread them. This is an issue we've discussed before, and for the chief, these are not new from when we spoke about it. But my concern about this kind of promotion is, first of all, it's litter. There's just no other way to describe it. A good portion of it, I'm concerned, will wind up in our storm drains, and it will fall to our taxpayers to pay the burden of getting those cleared out. And there's some safety hazard, too. There's rocks in these bags. If people get into that with their lawnmower later in the year. That's a safety hazard. And I think it's a little bit of a violation of my property. I don't want this in my yard. I don't care for this kind of promotion.
Where did you?
These were just along my street in Foxmore Drive. I picked them up on,
They throw them in the driveways.
yeah,
In the driveway?
In the driveways, and it does not usually go in your property. It's on this, it goes up to the sidewalk. The last one this weekend was a mulch guy from Aurora that does yards and that.
I've never had any.
count your blessings. There were a few streets in our subdivision that got this again. A couple of thoughts, and I would like some discussion as well.
Okay.
If there's little that we can do to stop this, then maybe we should talk about making it a form of solicitation that needs to be licensed. If there is something that we can do to enforce it, I would welcome that. There's no address, there's a post office box. I don't know if this company is reachable, or and when we discussed this in the past, if we didn't see this company tossing it out of their car, their enforcement's complicated.
Well, I'd like to ask the chief about that, because I thought we did follow up and find,
Correct. I haven't seen this one today, but we have identified the owners of the companies that did it in the past. I'll surely check into it. If there's a P.O. box, we'll be able to find out
Okay, good.
who that belongs to.
There's a phone number on there.
there's a phone number too, I think.
But I will defer to Steve as far as what we'll do with prosecuting if we're going to get that far, compliance, whatever we want to do.
The difficulty is obviously that the organizations that do this kind of are probably fairly fly-by-night. And so we have to catch somebody in the act to be able to prosecute them, or we have to develop some sort of a conspiracy to litter by the companies that do it. Either way, it's not easy, even though it should be. It seems like such a relatively simple and obvious thing. It isn't necessarily that simple and obvious, but it already is illegal. I mean, it is litter. You already identified that. I would caution you to regulate it, only because once you regulate, that means you're saying they can do it, and I don't think that's your goal. So I would suggest that the best we can really do is, I suppose it depends on how much energy you want to put of your staff towards the issue, is try to do more enforcement if that's the desire. But remember, I mean, our code enforcement officers are here, not that it's necessarily their problem, but the more time they spend on this, the less time they have to spend on other things. So it is a value judgment in that sense, too.
Now, is this all the streets, or just certain streets, the busier streets?
I have to confess that while it would have been good for my physique if I'd walked all the streets, I only walked a few. Now, apparently trustee, and I was concerned, some people drove by and I had 2 handsfuls of these, and I thought, oh, for heavens, they're going to think I'm the one throwing these out, so I got apprehensive. But apparently trustee Kazmarek found some in his neighborhood as well.
Brought yours out, yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple too in our subdivision, so,
And we had
Is
some.
it the same company?
yeah. Salinas,
Don't bring up the name.
oh, sorry.
So they appear to be getting the main feeder streets. Foxmore is a very well-traveled street. Shetland is an active street. And I suppose the newer subdivisions that have more landscaping needs are maybe hit hardest with this.
So I guess I have to ask you, how much staff time, or what do you think? Because I know what the chief said, he will follow up on it. And maybe that's the first step we take, and maybe with a letter to these people or a phone call.
Yes, I will, at the end of the meeting, I'll get one from each of you. We'll follow up on it.
Do you think that we could compose kind of a legal letter that says, basically cease and desist, this is a warning?
I can certainly do that.
And if we're going to go to the trouble to contact them, we may as well confirm it in writing, and maybe education is the solution here.
Can certainly do
something
that.
together?
Sure, I can work with Dan on that.
Okay.
Because
If you-
typically, phone call from the chief of police is very effective.
That's usually very effective, but I'm thinking if we just have a PO box,
But I
a
will.
letter in a PO box would also, I think, send the message. But, well, let's work on it that way and see if we can curtail it. If we can't, then we'll have to, you know, go further into it, but, as long as the chief is willing to follow up, we'll try to, cause it, and I can see kids getting a hold of those and tossing them and breaking a window here and there maybe, and, you know, hurting one another. So I think that's probably, Andy, did you wanna,
Something else.
okay.
Okay. Last year, we had a lady come in and talk about graffiti on her fences along Route 30 in Boulder Hill, or not Boulder Hill, but Seasons Ridge. Now, is that our responsibility to clean that up, or is that hers? Okay. All right. She was under assumption it was our responsibility to clean it up. Okay.
No, it's, her fence is on private property. I mean, I'd gladly help her, find someone to help her take it off.
Okay.
Yeah, you could refer her to
Okay.
us and, you know, we can work on it, but we don't have to do it. I mean,
All right,
we don't
just-
do it physically ourselves.
All right, just
I
checking.
think we've taken care of it if it's a gang-related, correct? But this wasn't?
On schools and so on.
Correct, that was not. If it's gang graffiti, I do have an agreement with the Public Works Director. He'll send his crew out there to take it off.
Is that on private property, is that on public property?
Public property. Private property, we'll still assist in getting gang graffiti removed. What's up there, it's been up there forever. It's been up there a few years. We're not sure what it means, but it's not gang
Where
or,
is this, on this fence that we're talking about?
yeah, this is a homeowner on Red Fox Run.
Right, I know, okay. But it's not gang graffiti, because
Correct.
there's a whole list of
Correct.
pictures and everything to identify, and I'm sure you have access to that.
Correct.
Okay, anything else?
How far along are we on the pawn shop ordinances?
We have, Dan and I have worked on that together. I don't know which agenda you're putting that on. It's, you know, we've got several drafts or several example ordinances that we're going to bring forth with a memo.
Correct.
To discuss the options.
I was going to put it on the April 16th COW. I believe it's the next meeting after tonight.
Thank you.
Is it, to add on to Denny Lee's, or Trustee Lee's thing, does that include the cash for gold type stores, or just pawn stores?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Is that the solicitors that are on the corner of Douglas and Montgomery Road?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, there will be a meeting on the 16th. Anything else? Okay, we'll, future meetings, village board meeting this, on April 8th is canceled. Committee of the whole meeting, this is also canceled on the 10th. Plan commission meeting is Thursday, April 11th, at 7 PM. Committee of the whole meeting Tuesday, April 16th at 7 PM. Village board meeting Monday, April 22nd at 7 PM. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines?
Yay.
Trustee Brawley?
Yes.
Trustee Kitts?
Yes.
Trustee Kizmir?
Yay.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
They were not listed under the Better Business Bureau.
Did you track them down?
That's where they are.